America has an insidious, unaddressed problem that's been around a lot longer than this pandemic. Charles Blaine, you were at the protests in downtown Houston. Your thoughts on this issue?
So I spent all day at the protest on Friday, and I heard a lot of folks, friends, colleagues, and others who spoke out against the protest. And I think it's important to remember that it isn't the fabric of who we are as Americans to stand up against injustice and speak out. And so this was just a manifestation of that. And yeah, we see violence that comes out of it, and none of us should be condoning that, but we shouldn't be surprised to see these protests. I mean, there was reports that said that out of the 100 largest police departments, 38% of the people killed by those officers were African Americans, and they only made up 21% of the people in those jurisdictions. And so we cannot argue that there is not a problem there, though many people want to argue that. And even if you look at the crime in a lot of these places, Newark, New Jersey has a high rate of crime, a high population of African Americans, a low rate of police violence. And you look at Orlando and Spokane, Washington, places with lower African American populations, lower rates of violent crime, but higher rates of police violence on the citizens. And so as a conservative who believes in accountability and transparency, I can't help, I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't speak out and call for transparency and accountability to the agency of government that is tasked with enforcing the laws that government makes. But what I find most frustrating about this is that there are people who are more concerned about the protest than about the fact that a cop kept his knee on the neck of an American, an unarmed American, an innocent American for 8 minutes, 2 minutes, and I believe 38 seconds of those where he was unresponsive. And as a black man in this country who is very fearful when the police pull him over or who gets followed in certain stores when I go to, it is frustrating to hear friends and colleagues and allies not recognize my frustration and not accept my lived experience because they don't see it themselves. And so I hope that they take this and realize that we have a serious issue that needs to be resolved. It's not going to be fixed by voting. It's not going to be fixed by anything other than empathy from a large portion of the country that doesn't have to have a father like my father did at 17 years old tell me not to drive through certain neighborhoods because I might get pulled over and not to go to certain stores. Until people realize and empathize with the other half of our country that has to live that every single day of their lives, I don't think we're going to see any resolution.